For joining after lunch. I know I don't know how many people here took a nap. I know I did. It was definitely worthwhile, especially after all the sessions and trying to learn so much. My name is Fred Miller. I'm the U.S. training manager. So pretty much anywhere, Canada, U.S., and then a little bit of Mexico, pretty much anyone who speaks English in Mexico, I will train them on how Amarsis works. So today we're actually going to be looking at one of kind of the Amarsis Academy sessions. So this is focused around Automation Center. And so instead of going into kind of a hands-on demo of the product, we're going to be looking at big strategy. So I know some people here are not Amarsis clients. They don't use Amarsis. They may be on the fence. And other people are maybe longtime users of Amarsis, and they've used Automation Center in Amarsis, or they've used some other tools. And so I really want to focus on some big picture ideas of one, we're going to be looking at things like where we go wrong. We're going to be trying to understand where our problems are. We're going to be spending some time looking at what you need in a marketing automation software. So we'll be going through that as well. And then we'll also get into some strategy behind Automation Center. So I want to start, though, with focusing on why we're all here today. So I know when a lot of us come to a conference, it's really, really easy to turn off your email or turn off your email notifications and just disappear for a few days. And then you come back after a couple of days to, 100, 200, 300 emails, really depending on how much was happening during that time. And so it's really easy to disconnect and use this almost like a vacation. And I want to try and focus us around less disconnecting and really disconnecting to re-engage and to re-understand what we're doing on a day-to-day. So I want our goal to be to take a step back to see things a little bit more clearly. And I want to talk about a friend of mine named Andy J. Pizza. He is this very good-looking fella here. He is Dr. Andy J. Pizza, no PhD, and his last name is not actually Pizza. Dr. Andy J. Pizza is an illustrator based out of Columbus, Ohio, originally Columbus, Indiana, which is really close to Indianapolis, where I'm from. And I met Andy whenever he was a chubby, awkward jailhouse guard. So Andy was originally an illustrator. He actually lived, I believe in, is it Edinburgh? Is that how you say it? Okay, great. So he lived in Edinburgh for a while, originally from the US, moved to Edinburgh for university, and then moved back, and just wasn't very successful, didn't do a really good job. And so when I met him, he wasn't doing well. He was barely making any money. He wasn't doing illustration. And that was about 10 years ago. Now, Andy hosts a podcast called the Creative Pep Talk Podcast. And one of his journeys that I'd seen with Andy was going from this weird jailhouse working guy to this now famous or semi-famous podcaster. And one of the big things that he focuses on during his podcast and during his time working with creatives is really understanding what you do and then using that and marketing it. But something that really drew me to Andy was an installation that he did in Indianapolis. So this is a video a little bit about the installation. There's no audio, so don't worry about that. I'll be talking while this is happening. But Andy and his friend Andrew decided it would be really fun to turn an art gallery into a coloring book. And so he took a couple days to just sit and draw all of these cute little illustrations, and then they made these huge markers that anyone could walk into the gallery and just start painting and drawing and covering the wall with whatever colors they wanted. Now, what Andy talks about in his podcast, he talks about the process of this, coming up with the idea, but he also talks about how important it was whenever he's actually working through and designing this. You'll notice he spends a lot of time right here with the wall right in front of him. I think it's really easy for us as marketers, as doers, as people who have a job to get done, to spend a lot of time with our face right up against the wall. And he talks about the importance of working for 4 or 5, 6 hours, leaving to grab lunch because he's been drawing all day, and coming back and actually seeing where the holes are, seeing where he needs to fill in, where he needs to draw another piece of pizza, or he needs to draw another person. It was really, really beneficial. And he uses this as an analogy for really creative workers, but any person who's doing any type of job that requires thinking. Obviously, I think a lot of us here are thinkers. We're not just pressing a button. As much as sometimes it feels like we're just pressing send on emails, we really are thinking, we have strategy. And so I want to really take the time today to take a step back and look at that strategy, understand what we're doing, and then reapproach the things that we are currently doing with a new vigor and a new fervor. So I want to start first by looking at what we need in a marketing automation platform. So for some of you, you are already in Emarsis. This is going to sound a lot like Emarsis. That's not intentional, but obviously I work in Emarsis and I think our stuff is great. And I do training, so I get to talk about it all the time. But for anyone new, this will help you kind of filter through as you're looking through different options to understand what do you actually need on a day-to-day. So I want to start by identifying a couple different levels. We have what I like to call level 1. So we have inclusion and exclusion and channel engagement. This is very simple. So let's think about this in a welcome series automation that we're putting together. We need to know who's new, so our inclusion, who's not new, our exclusion. So we have a list of new people, and we want to send them an email. This is where we bring channel engagement in. So we send them an email. Maybe we want to do an SMS. Maybe we want to do a Facebook ad. This is just a really simple, very basic automation. It's running on its own. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to go through a list and find out who that is. We have some sort of rules included. So a lot of automations look something like this. They're very simple. Someone's new, they get an email. That's great. That's the very basic level. Now, as we get into level 2, we start adding a lot of extra layers of strategy. And what's really cool about this level 2 is that this can take us on a simple automation like a welcome series. It can really take us to the next level of providing a bit more personalization and personality to our marketing campaigns. So this includes things like filtering. Filtering is going to be similar to an inclusion and an exclusion. But with filtering, we're taking that inclusion and exclusion and throwing it into the workflow. So let's take the idea of a marketing or a welcome automation again. We have our new people. They're getting an email. And then maybe we want to wait a few days. So we have scheduling here. We want to wait a few days and then see if those people have clicked on our email before we send them another one. This is what we typically think of when we're looking at automations. Something that has some steps, some wait times, some different levels of engagement, filtering people out from different areas, moving them to maybe an offer if they haven't clicked, and maybe not an offer if they already have clicked. So this is level 2. Now, when we get into some really cool stuff, we get into level 3. So level 3 allows us to connect systems together. So this is where we have things like API integrations. Who here understands or knows what an API is? Hey, that's great. There's so many people. So for anyone who's not familiar with API, API is essentially like a language that allows one computer system to talk to another computer system. And this can be something as simple as, I have this list of people, and I want them to receive an email. That's a very, very simple API call. What's cool with APIs too, we have the ability to include something called a JSON object. So it's actually a little bit of JavaScript that comes through that allows us to personalize the content inside of emails and do different things. So there's a lot of really cool stuff with API integrations. A really good example of this, we have a client that goes on site and meets their customers really regularly. And they have a form that they fill out with their customer and press submit on that form. With the information that that customer fills out, the email not only fills in like what the person's name is, what their job is, it transforms the email with different images, different content that's all personalized to that person. Now, before that form was built, I was actually an email campaign designer for Emarsis, and I was responsible with taking all 50 to 60 requests that came in every day and building those emails. It would take 4 to 6 hours to do that, something that a little API integration can fix. So this is super important. The next level for the next important piece for level 3 is having the ability to link our automations together. So we're going to see why this is really important, but linking automations is going to give us a lot of flexibility. So we don't have to build an automation program that's huge and super consuming and really hard to follow. We can actually build a program that's a little simpler and link things to different places and have a different level of engagement and be able to tweak our strategy a little more. And we'll see that when we get into this next step. So I want to kind of dig into where we're going wrong whenever we're building automations and some of the issues that I've seen through being a campaign designer as well as being a trainer. It's really great to be the email designer and to get the content and to actually kind of work through that with the client to make something work. So it's kind of the same thing with training, being able to get people in that. So let's focus on the first one here. A blog told us to do a blank automation. I think we're all a little guilty of reading blogs and seeing something really, really cool that someone's like, we had 17x ROI just by putting out this one automation. We ran a welcome series. We ran a cart abandonment series. And it feels like if we just do that, we're going to be successful. This doesn't always work. If you've ever gone through and made any automations off of a blog post, sometimes you're really satisfied. Maybe that automation worked really well for your clients. Maybe it didn't. And a lot of people don't even know if that's working. So we're going to look at how we can solve that problem here in a little bit as well. The next one is something that, as an email designer, I have seen really regularly. Let me hit this over here. We are waiting on the email designer. That was me. People would send emails that they needed to be fixed or they needed to be designed, and then I would come back and be like, hey, we need an image for the footer, and would never get an email or never get an image for a footer. Or we get an image, we get the wrong one, or it would be the wrong size. A lot of us have built and designed automations that have sat stagnant and unused for months because we're waiting on one email. Maybe we want a 3-step welcome series. We have the first email, but we don't have the second. Maybe we have the second email, but not the first. We don't have the third. So I want to kind of look at that and look at how we can solve that problem as well. My favorite one here, though, is what I like to call the Rube Goldberg machine. So anyone here familiar with Rube Goldberg machines? Okay, we have a few people. A Rube Goldberg machine is a machine that is way larger than the simple task that is trying to accomplish. So in the GIF or GIF, depending on how you interpret that, we've got this little ball that's trying to go into a box and be closed. A very simple task, and yet it's going through these magnets, it's going down the chute, it's going into a trash bin, and it's a way too complicated process to actually achieve something as simple as putting a marble in a box. A lot of us are designing automations this way. We have all of these steps. It's all broken out. We look at it, and it looks a lot more like this than it does like that. Now, for anyone who's looked at these automations and has received an email from any customer support, whenever someone complains about receiving the wrong email over here on the left-hand or the right-hand side, it's really hard to figure out where that went wrong. And we need to find a way that we can fix those problems. All right, so let's actually dig into some of the strategy behind Automation Center, and then we're going to come back and see how we can fix those problems that we've identified. So the first thing that we need is a goal. I think a lot of times we start an automation without having a goal in mind. Now, a goal allows us to test to understand if we've achieved it. For instance, I was just on site with a client that was based out of Vancouver, and they do vegan shoes. So for anyone who doesn't know what a vegan shoe is, it's just non-leather shoes. They use synthetic materials to create shoes. I had no idea, so don't feel bad if you didn't know what a vegan shoe was. They don't taste very good, though. So they designed vegan shoes, and one of their big goals was to educate people, one, why you should buy vegan shoes, why is it important, and then what do they do with the shoes that they have sold previously. And so they built their Welcome series around the goal of education. And by basing it around education, the way that they understood if they were successful or they weren't successful was based on engagement with the email. So they had kind of a next steps built into the email. So goals allow us to identify the ways that we're going to be, one, designing our emails or designing a Facebook ad, designing an SMS, and then what we're going to use to understand if someone has actually achieved that intended purpose. Cart abandonment is a good example of this as well. We want people to make a purchase. It's a very simple goal. If we have the ability to test that, then we can do that. Next up, we have a starting point. So this is kind of where we get back to that inclusion and exclusion. If I want my starting point to be a new person who's just joined our email list, or we want it to be someone who's abandoned their cart, do I have the data available to actually get those people into this automation? Do I have the data available to understand the goal? So we need to make sure that we can actually get people into an automation. If I want to do a cart abandonment automation, and I want to send them an email, and I want to do a Facebook ad, I want to send an SMS, I've got like all of this information for these people, but I don't know who's on my website and who's abandoning their cart, that's a really bad choice. We need to get that starting point first. This is really, really important. This is the next thing that we need to look at. Beyond that, we look at channels. So it's really common whenever you are collecting emails, at least in the US, a lot of people are collecting more emails than they are SMS. But people really want to reach people where they are. They want to send a text message because everyone's on their phone all the time. They may not be looking at their email, especially if it's their work email and it's the weekends. So they want to send a text message. And so they'll spend a lot of money to try and send a text message, but they only have 3 or 4% of their audience who actually has a mobile number. And they have no way to add a mobile number. This is something that we need to understand as we're creating an automation. Where are our clients right now? Where are they? Where are they sitting? Are they on their email? Are they on Facebook? Are they on their phone? Are they on our website? How do we engage with those people based on where they are? Next up, we want to understand offers. Offers are really important to encourage someone to make a purchase, but offers are not always the best way to do that. So for instance, if we're looking at things like segmentation based on how people have purchased in the past, how they've engaged on our website, how active they are, maybe we have somebody who's been on our website 5 out of the last 10 days. They've made a ton of purchases in the past, and then we decide to throw them a 20% discount. They probably were going to purchase anyway. We've seen them on our website. This seems really similar to what they've done before. So we may not always need an offer to every person. This is where we want to do things like filtering, to segment people out, to say, all right, this person's really active, they should receive an offer. These people are really active, they should not receive an offer. These people are really inactive, they should receive an offer. We need to kind of sweeten the deal to get them involved. And finally, this is probably the simplest one, frequency. So I think this is something that's really easily overlooked, but a very important in strategy, and this is kind of the final step if you're in a Marsis. Before you launch any automation, you have to define what we call participation settings. So frequency could be as simple as we have a welcome series and we only want this person to receive this one time ever. That's really common for welcome series. Now, if we're giving an offer for maybe a cart abandonment email, if somebody has abandoned their cart and we want to send them a 10% discount in the first email, we probably don't want them abandoning their cart every week to get 10% off so they can buy more things. So we need to keep this in mind. How frequently should someone receive this offer? How frequently should someone be included in this audience? I may abandon my cart all the time, but you probably shouldn't be giving me a 10% discount if the only time I'm making a purchase is whenever I got that 10% discount. So it's really easy to jump directly into your automation program with these things in mind and start dropping things in, like, oh, I want new people, and then I want to do an email, and I want to filter if they've clicked. I want us to kind of take a step back from always turning to our marketing platforms. I think it is going to create patterns, and we've actually seen in scientific studies that whenever you do something in the same way every time, it creates a pattern or reinforces patterns that we already have. And so you may jump in with a new mindset and then end up creating the same automation that you would have created before. This is really common. So I'm a musician on the side of doing training, and this is really common for songwriters. You'll see songwriters, especially when people are writing a new record, they'll go out and buy a new guitar, they'll buy a new keyboard, they'll buy some sort of new tool to help them get out of their brain, their typical patterns of creating things. So I want us to do something a little bit more like this. Let's actually pull out paper, let's pull out maybe an iPad, and I did this. So I came up with this idea with that vegan shoe company. I used their idea that they had. They wanted to create a welcome series. So I took the goal, and the goal was to educate new subscribers. The start point, very simple, new subscribers. What channels? They wanted to do email, and they also wanted to do Facebook, because they know a lot of people are engaged on Facebook. They wanted to do a percentage discount instead of a flat dollar value or euro value discount, because they wanted to encourage people to spend more money to get a little bit larger discount. And they wanted this to be one time. So they just wanted this to be something that encourages these customers to be involved, but doesn't just give them a discount every time that they put in their email. So very simple. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be something simple. And I apologize for bad handwriting. I'm a musician, not an illustrator, unfortunately. All right. So let's look at how we can actually fix these problems. All right, let's start with this idea of a blog told us to do a blank automation. First, we need to evaluate. So if we're creating an automation based on rules that we read on a blog, this may not filter into our business's goals. So we need to understand, what are our goals? How can we make changes to this automation to achieve these goals? So if you haven't made a goal for this, let's write down some goals. Let's come up with some ideas. And then the next step is evaluating if we're actually reaching our customers. It's really easy to make an automation, to press play, and then to never look at it again. We don't know if people are actually clicking. We don't know if they're buying. We're kind of like, well, they got the email. It looks like it's working, but we don't really know. We don't know if it's meeting that goal. So by having a goal and by reevaluating if we're reaching our customers where they are, it allows us to kind of move forward. And the next step, we need to fix our problems. So this may not mean pausing this automation. Maybe it's getting a little bit of revenue and it's doing something. But we may want to make a copy and start editing and making changes. Or if it's not achieving any goals that we want, let's just delete it. Just let it go, like Elsa says, for anyone with young kids. A little Frozen song, you can put that on, go to YouTube, just look, let it go. Let it play as you delete it. Now, next up, we're waiting on the email designer. Let's start by evaluating with what we need to start. Do we need to have all 3 emails? Do we need to have design for Facebook? Do we need all of those things to do a welcome series? Maybe we could start with something as simple as 1 email or 1 SMS, 1 Facebook message. Do we have the information that we need to start right now? And then, once we decide if we have that information, let's come up with an idea of a minimum viable product. So what is the very minimum that we need to create this automation? If it's 1 email, let's start with 1 email. Let's send them 1 email educating, like in a welcome series, educating our customers, reminding them that their cart is abandoned, that they should come back and make that purchase. And then going forward, we can link it. Because if we have a marketing automation platform that allows us to link automations together, we can take the very end point of our 1 email automation and move that to the start point of a new automation. So we don't always have to come with everything prepared. Sometimes we just need to get the very basics the very minimum, and start with that. Finally, my favorite, the Rube Goldberg machine. So we need to take some time evaluating what problems we have. So are we receiving any complaints? I see this a lot whenever I go over to the support side of Emarsis, where we have these huge automations that people print out on like 30 pages of paper, and they like stitch them all together, and they're walking through like, well, the person got email number 1, but they didn't get email number 3. But they should have been included in email number 4. It's like, oh my gosh, like it is a huge headache to solve those problems, and it takes so much time. Can it be divided? Can we break it out the same way that we did before by looking at, a starting point where we don't have all of the content that we need? Can we break it up into little bits? And then if we see a problem with, maybe someone was supposed to receive email number 3, but they didn't, we could probably assume because something happened before getting to email 3, maybe they got email 2, maybe they didn't get email 2. This is a really easy way to start breaking these up and understanding. So think in bite-sized pieces. We want multiple automations, branching out. Make it as simple as possible. I know for some of us, we're probably pretty good with technology. You're in marketing, but you also are at a marketing tech conference. You probably understand technology really well. And for you, looking through those big automations is probably not an issue. But whenever you start hiring more people to your team, maybe you hire an intern or you have a new person really focused on those marketing automations, will they understand it? By breaking these out and making them smaller, it makes it really, really easy for us to kind of pass on the torch to the next person on our team, the next generation, the next intern, and kind of take things off of your plate to be more strategic and to make better decisions. And then finally, linking our automations. So this comes down to that bite-sized pieces. Let's keep these things linked together. So to summarize what we've talked about today, we first started by looking at what we need in a marketing automation platform. So we need a way to include and exclude people. We need some sort of channel engagement, email, Facebook, SMS. We need some sort of filtering. So we need to be able to move people around inside of our automation programs to decide if they're successful, if they're not successful. We need to schedule. So scheduling could be something as simple as a product release. So we've got an email one day, an email a couple days later, email a week later, and then the product comes out and they get another email. Or it could be something like a delay. So wait 2 days and evaluate through the filtering to see if they've been successful. Next, we have API integration. So this is where we get really technical. We have the ability to link our systems. We can link things like WebExtend with Emarsis, things like Magento or Shopify. And then finally, program linking our automation programs together. After that, we looked at strategy for planning marketing automations. So these 5 steps: creating a goal, finding our starting point. Do we have the information that we need to get people involved? What channels are our clients on? Where can we engage with them? What offers do we want to give them? And finally, how frequently are they going to be receiving these offers and receiving these levels of engagement? And then we looked at 3 problems and ways to solve those. And if you guys want, I can pull up any of these slides here at the end if you want to take any photos. I can also email it to you if you want any of that. But we looked at these 3. A blog told us to do a blank automation. We're waiting on the email designer, and finally, the Rube Goldberg machine. So we do have time for questions here at the end. So if you all have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. If you don't like asking questions in a big conference hall, I will be off to the side, and we can answer questions there. But any questions that you'd like to ask in front of everyone? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time, and I'll be hanging out over here.